All right, stop it here. All right, so let's see. So on question number 1, look at that. So 90% of you agree with majority opinion in Jacque, and almost the exact same number of you agreed with the majority in State v. Jacque. So I want to talk to the people who changed their minds, who liked the majority in one but not in the other. Does anyone fit that bill? Megan?
Yeah, so I didn't agree with the first case.
The Jacque case, yeah?
Yeah, I felt like the punitive damages was just like way too much.
But you agree with the State v. Jacque opinion? Okay. Now, is there anyone who agrees with the first case but not the second case? That is, you agree with Jacque, but you don't agree with State v. Jacque. Yeah, Shinoda?
So, yeah, I agreed with for the first case because the reasoning that if the state can't somehow keep them away from doing these things, and nominal damages doesn't really do that. So the punitive damages made sense. For the second one, I didn't like the case because the court, I feel like, why were they?
Oh, what a good. Why were they even answering that question, huh?
Yeah.
Did anyone else take the same position as Shinoda, that they agreed with the Wisconsin case but not the New Jersey case? Yeah, Reed, what was your thinking there?
I understood the necessity. I just didn't think that was of actual necessity to going on somebody's property. So I think in that case they could stretch necessity and so in future cases.
Yeah. Look at this. It's 64-8 and 65%. I think you're the one. Look at the 64-8 and 65. I think you're the one. Congratulations. Anyone else? So the reason why I put these questions back to back is, again, I don't care what you think. I think there's good arguments on both sides. The reason why I put these back to back is it illustrates the same principle, right, about the right to exclude, which is our discussion for today, comes out completely differently based on the context. And I like how your casebook puts these cases right back to back, right? And they're short, only a couple pages each. But they illustrate this thing called the right to exclude, which is going to be our subject for today, right? What is this right to exclude, and how far does it reach? So where did I drop off last time? Who's next? Stephanie, you next? So Stephanie, tell me please, what is this right to exclude?
Not allowing people on your land that
Well, what does it mean, the right to exclude? Who has this right?
the property owner.
Okay. And what does this property right entail?
The right to not have right to the property that you have.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so your name tag is not facing the correct way. Sir?
Me?
Yeah, your name tag is perpendicular. I can say it. Alec, thank you, sir. Alec, Stephanie made a point. She said that this right to exclude means you can use your property in a way so as not to harm others. Stephanie, is that more or less what you're getting at? What does that mean, Alec?
The right to use your land to harm others?
Yeah, I mean, you restated it, right? But what's the implication that you can use? By the way, the microphone's plugged in here, so I have to carry the thing around, so I'm going to be doing it. I'm going to try and get a long cable for our next class. But what does that mean? You can use the property in a way not to injure others. What's the significance of that kind of statement? What does it actually mean?
To look out for other people, and you have the power to. I'm not sure how to answer this question.
Alec, why should the law allow you to use your property however you see fit? Why?
It's your property. You should have the freedom to be able to do what you want with it.
Well, then we look like this case, State v. Jacque, right? This case from New Jersey. The court there identified, I think, at least as a matter of policy, if not law, a reason why that rule doesn't make much sense, right? where you can use your property in a way that isn't so good to others. Lance, why do we have this idea in property that you can use it however you wish? But where does this idea come from?
Ownership.
What do you mean ownership?
That anyone has a right, it should be used through the owner.
But why? Why does owning property give you the right to do what you want with it? I'm asking a very fundamental question, very basic question. You all assume this, right? But does it have to be? Right? Lance, let's just take an example, right? North Korea. The Soviet Union. Pick your country. Right? These are countries in the world. Well, not anymore, but Soviet Union was a country, right? Where you might have had an apartment, right? You might have had a plot of land. But did you actually own it by yourself?
No.
Who owned it?
The government?
Yeah, the government owned it. Could you exclude whoever you wanted from it? No. I mean, that's an economy. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. But why, Katie, why does our, at least in the Anglo-American tradition, our economy have this right to exclude when other countries perhaps don't have it?
Maybe it's just because all the land is like actually traced back to land grants. And so, I mean, in terms of like the state, I mean, that kind of had to do with a government right on the property.
But why did our system develop that way? You're describing what it is today. Why did it develop that way? It didn't have to. We could have gone the way of the Soviet Union, right? Why did our system of property develop with this right to exclude?
Because everybody, I guess we'd say, acquisition by discovery, and everybody was able to
Okay, now you're on the right track. So Dylan, what would happen in our legal system if we didn't have a right to exclude? What would the consequence of that be?
Well, then everyone would be fighting over land.
Yeah, and what do we call that? What was that like?
I think the tragedy of...
Tragedy of the commons, very good, right? The reason why we have this right to exclude is to resolve this tragedy of the commons where everyone can fight over limited resources. It's not a good way of running a society. Indeed, we say, and this is quoted, that the right to exclude is the most important aspect of property. Why? Because if you can't exclude someone from your property, someone else can take it. So the most central element of property that we talked about this entire semester is the ability to exclude others. And you study this in torts, right? Trespass. So strict liability offense. Someone's on your property, they're liable. You kick them out, call the cops, throw them away. There's no balancing, there's no duty of care. If they trespass, they trespass. That reflects the centrality of this right to exclude. Okay? Now, Kelly, the book makes reference, and I think I talked about this last week, to this idea of a bundle of sticks. Right? What is this? What is this bundle of sticks? What are they talking about there? What's a bundle of sticks? Well, okay, well, property rights. What do you mean? Are there several? Isn't just I own property, that's it? What do you mean rights, plural?
I think it's more than one. Like whenever we're talking about like belonging.
Give me more. You're on the right track. I was talking, that's why I'm asking about it. Good. What's this bundle of sticks? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, bundle of sticks.
I guess with the each stick would be your right to remove or
Oh.
your right to exclude. And
Okay.
with the government, it would take away.
Oh, you're very much on the right track. So these are different elements. Samantha, you want to add something? Right to what's this bundle of sticks? Give me a little bit more. I think you're almost done.
That you have the right to do certain things with your property that you couldn't, like giving it away but not selling it, or having that certain right and not the full bundle to sell it.
Okay. Okay. Very good. I think you're this entire row more or less got what I was looking for. When we say property, right, it's not a single property right. I like the way Kelly said it. Property rights. Plural, right? There are several. when you have a piece of property, you should be asking yourself several questions, right? Can you use it? Can you sell it? Can you dispose of it? Can you include, that is, can you invite people onto your property? Can you exclude, that is, keep people off your property? And this applies to both land as well as physical stuff, a chattel, if you will. And we discussed this with the organs, right? You can donate your organs, you can donate your tissue, but you can't sell it for profit. Okay? We discussed this in the context of prostitution, right? You could have relations for free, but you can't do it for money. You can put alcohol in your body, you can't put cocaine in your body, right? The sorts of things you can do to your property vary based on the context. And there are two that I want to talk about today at length, which is the right to include and the right to exclude, right? The right to include and the right to exclude. Okay? Now, you've probably never thought about this, right? But you take it for granted that when you have a house, you have an apartment, you have a farm, whatever it is, you can invite whomever you want onto the property. You take that for granted. If you have a friend who wants to come over, a family member, you can let them on. You have a plumber who comes by to fix your toilet, you can invite him on. But what if you had a piece of property and you couldn't let anyone else onto it? Wait a minute, Josh. How is that even possible? In the 1800s, you had Indian territories, and the state of Georgia passed a law that said on the reservation, only Indians were allowed, that non-native people cannot enter. Right? They could keep out the white settlers, that was fine, but they weren't allowed to admit anyone who's not of their own background. Now, why would such a law be enacted? Right? Why? They're trying to keep lawyers away from the natives. It was actually largely to keep lawyers away, because the lawyers can help them out. But the right to include was actually blocked, and this went to the Supreme Court in a case involving the native people. Okay. It was actually one of my other John Marshall opinions, who again I'm not a fan of for many reasons, but John Marshall, who wrote also Johnson vs. McIntosh, held that the states had the right to keep people out. Think of also the Native Americans we talked about in Johnson vs. McIntosh. They could use the land, but they couldn't exclude people from the land. So when I ask you what is property, I'm not asking you one question. I'm actually asking you several questions, right? Can you use it? Can you sell it? Can you dispose of it? Can you include? Can you exclude? But our biggies for today are including and excluding. Okay, so we talk about this right to include. Justin, so in this context, what then does it mean to have a right to exclude? What does that mean?
Just being able to determine who or is able to utilize it.
Right. And again, this is real and personal property. You can't take my organ, right? You can't go and rip my kidney out of my back. You're not allowed to. I can exclude you from doing that. Right? If you think about the entire notion of a battery, you can exclude someone from your body. That's more or less what it is, right? But on real property, it means you can erect a fence. You can keep people out. If someone hops over the fence, you can call the police and get them arrested for trespass. You can sue them for trespassing, right? There are various causes of action that you can use. This right to exclude is deemed so important because without it, people won't be secure in their possessions. If anyone could enter your property at any time, you can't invest. You can't have privacy. You can't enjoy it in the way you wish. So the two cases we're studying today, back to back, Jacque and State v. Jacque, illustrate the extent to which you're willing to actually defend this right to exclude. 90% of you were fine with the trailer home, right? Mobile home, I'm sorry. I always get in trouble. 90% of you were okay with the mobile home, but then when it came to the migrant workers, you'll jump ship. So, Marcella, you want to give me the facts, please, in Jacque?
Sure. So, Steenberg was moving a mobile home,
Very good. You didn't say trailer home as I did, I shouldn't say that. Yes, go ahead.
and then he had to go through Jackson, or it would be easier to go through Jackson than to go through Steenberg.
Okay.
And Jacque refused to.
Now let me just pause here for Marcella, right? So, has everyone ever seen a mobile home being transported? They have like these flatbeds, and they're really wide, right? They usually have like they take up more than one lane on the highway. You've seen this, right? So transporting these things is not easy. This is Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, they have snow. Not like a snow day here where there's no actual snow. There's actually snow. There was actually a lot of snow. Now, Lucas, let me ask you this question. Could they have transported the home over public roads?
Yes, but the
Yeah, but
the only alternative is a private road.
was it possible to use a public road?
No.
No, that's not right. Dave?
They have the option of using the road, but it would require them moving a lot of snow. It's a lot of snow, but also including getting rollers.
There it is. Yeah, that's it. You got right. So here's the issue. If you have a road with a very sharp turn and you have this humongous trailer, it might tip over, right? So you basically put these rollers on the side to help it from preventing fall over. Jolene, is your hand up?
Yes, it does say private road. But I know that in the case that Jacque said you could use the road. So
it says private road. You're not wrong. They could have used that without getting Jacque's permission. These are just take. They could have used that other road if they want the rollers. Yeah, but very good. Reading. I like people read carefully. So they could have used this other road with the rollers. They could have done that. Now, Lauren, why do you think they didn't use this this other setup with the rollers and everything else? Oh, the two Laurens. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant this one over here. Yeah, Lauren.
It would have cost a lot more to move all.
Okay, yeah. So it would have been a lot more time, a lot more energy. So again, they could have used this alternate road. Instead, Lauren, what did they try to do? What was their first effort at resolving the situation? Oh, they asked. They asked for permission. Was permission granted? Okay, so then Austin, what did they do after they asked for permission?
They did it anyway.
Well, before they did it anyway, they tried one of their options, right? Usually what do people do when they don't get permission?
Yeah.
And what do they maybe try and use to sweeten the deal?
Some money.
Money, right? They offered to pay them, right? What was the property owner interested in taking their money?
No.
They said, no amount, go use the road, right? Now, this Lauren. Okay, Lauren.
Yeah.
I once had last semester two guys and two girls. Two guys drove me crazy, but deliberately, I don't know. But it was the same name guy girl. It drove me nuts. Anyway, so Lauren, was the refusal of the property owners to let them cross over reasonable?
Like in my opinion.
I asked my question the way I did. What's your answer? I asked if it was reasonable. I know. I asked a question.
Yes.
Okay, why do you think it's a reasonable response that they're not going to let them out for any amount of money?
Because it's their choice, it's their property.
Oh.
It doesn't infringe on anything serious.
But isn't it, we discussed societal benefit. Wouldn't it be beneficial to society for letting this trailer cross over at a lower cost? I mean, Daniel, let me ask you this question. Was there any damage to the property by driving over it with the trailer? There's like 5 feet of snow.
I guess it depends how heavy it was.
Okay, let's say they left some ruts on the grass, right? Let's just hypothetically. How expensive is that to fix?
Probably less than $2,000 if they were hot.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at, right? So odds are if you're driving a trailer over 5 feet of snow and the snow's really packed, there's going to be no damage to the ground. I mean, I'm guessing, but maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. All right? But let's assume there were some ruts in the grass. Couldn't that be fixed for a lot less than $10,000? Right? Couldn't we say that the most socially efficient way to resolve this situation is by just paying for the cost of the damage, right? Just pay them for whatever the damage is and be done with it. But now, Michelle, what's the response to that, right? You're the property owner. What's the response to that question? Why can't we just pay you for your damage and be done with it? By the way, the damages were actually nominal, at $1, so there was no ruts as it turned out. But why can't we say we'll just pay for your damages?
Because, as a property owner, that's just burdensome. I think the
Yeah.
judge had already said before, their neighbors they were like in an adverse possession
Oh,
action, so
yeah.
they've already been screwed over once.
right. So, in other words, even if this would allow society as a whole to be better off, screw society, right? What do we care about other people? All we care about is our own plan. All right, so Shayna. So we know they basically offered to pay. They said no. They said, all right, let's do it anyway. I don't give a blank what he said. Just get the home there any way you can. And the manager was giggling like, whatever, right? They deliver the home across the land. Jacque calls the sheriff on him, right? They call the sheriff on him. They give him a citation, whatever, $30. They sue for trespass. Okay, again, the damages are only $1 nominal. In other words, there was no ruts, there was nothing. There was not a single remnant of the trailer on the guy's property. But then the jury awards $100,000 in punitive damages. Now, Shayna, you studied punitive damages before in other classes. Where have you studied those? All right. Can you give punitive damages on a breach of contract?
Yeah. Oh, no, not in breach.
When can punitive damages be awarded?
When you have an expectation of it, so you damage for torts, you can award it. If,
Torts, okay, now in the right track, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you can award it if they violated your rights. Essentially.
If you are grossly negligent, right? As a general matter, you can get punitive damages in torts. Punitive, the word puny is like punish, right? The purpose, actually, wait, Madison, what's the purpose for punitive damage? Why do they exist? Well, not just to compensate. That's compensatory damages, right? What's a punitive damage? Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Punish. Right? Punitive damages are designed to punish really bad conduct. This is why in torts, if you're grossly negligent, a jury may award punitive damage. They don't have to. They can be awarded. Contracts, you don't get punitive damages for breach. That's not an option, right? And generally in property, you don't get punitive damages either. It just doesn't really happen very much. But why do you think here, Cheyenne, why do you think here the jury decided to dump $100,000 in punitive damages on the defendants here? That's a lot of money.
Already told no. Maybe they don't know.
Yeah. Why do you think? But again, this juries are picked from the place where the case arises, right? These jurors probably were in the same community as the Jacques. Maybe they know each other, who knows, right? But they were in the same community, maybe farmers also. What do you think the jury was trying to do here with their punitive damage? What were they what message were they trying to convey? Don't mess with property, right? Punitive damages aren't only about punishing. They all serve the purpose of sending a message, right? The message that I think this jury was trying to send is, you really screwed up. And we're not only punishing you, we're trying to send a signal to everyone else who's driving mobile homes, don't cross our land, because you're going to hit with a $100,000 punitive damage award, which is probably many times over the cost of the actual mobile home itself, if I had to guess. And also, if they had an insurance policy, I don't know if the insurance policy covers the punitive damages. I don't know, but often they don't. So he was probably the hook out of this out of pocket. I mean, this probably put him out of business, right? This is a really big deal. So the trial judge set aside the jury award of punitive damages. And trial judges have that power. They can decide that the law didn't support an award of punitive damages. In other words, $1 damage was adequate. So then it gets to Supreme Court. Joyce, what does the Wisconsin Supreme Court do here with the punitive damage award?
says that if they don't, the court essentially says that because that was their property, they had the right to enjoy it any way they could, and they had the right to say no.
Very good, very good. So the Supreme Court of Wisconsin reinstated the punitive damage award, right? The lower court set it aside. The Wisconsin Supreme Court reinstated it. And they quote this case, Kaiser-Retina versus United States, when they say, the right to exclude others from land is one of the most essential sticks in the bundle of rights that are commonly characterized as property. So, this isn't, Blackman making this crap up. The Supreme Court's talking about bundles of sticks, right? Every law student since time immemorial has learned about the bundle of sticks, and it infects the Supreme Court opinions, right? By the way, the more Supreme Court decisions you read, the unhappier I am. I love this class because there are very few SCOTUS decisions, very few, because the Supreme Court messes stuff up. Property is much better left to state courts. I actually am very happy with this. So, I mean that sincerely. In property, too, you have a lot of SCOTUS cases. They'll drive you nuts. These cases are better. So this right to exclude is the most important stick in the bundle. And what the court says is this right is hollow if the legal system doesn't protect it, right? Sidra, what does that mean, this right is hollow if the legal system doesn't protect it?
It basically means it doesn't have any value
Mhm.
if the court or other people abuse it and use it and value.
Okay, good. In other words, unless the law, the court's willing to stand up to protect it, people will walk all over this right. Because imagine, right? Imagine, is that Aaron? Aaron, let's say the court had here ruled that only $1 punitive damages were awarded, right? Steenberg, next time he needs to transport a trailer, think you'll ask for permission? Right. So the same guy, I'm sure all of his buddies would do the same. They'll just trespass everywhere. So the court here is saying unless the law is willing to stand up to defend this right to exclude, it loses its vitality. Okay? Nominal damages, $1, does not provide protection. Society, the court says, has an interest in punishing, deterring intentional trespassing beyond protecting the interests of the individual owner. Think about that. This isn't only about Jacque. They're trying to send a message more broadly about the importance of this right to exclude. Private landowners, the court says, should feel confident that trespassers will be punished. That's the key word, punished. Not just compensated for the losses, but punished. And the court also makes a point saying that with these sorts of punitive damage awards, there's less likely to resort to self-help. Kendra, what's this self-help business?
I don't think self-help like where you to take the law into their own hands, so then they would do something probably more, or they don't.
Like what?
Like have guns and then shoot people.
Yeah. You could just shot the guy traveling across his property, or lay down a strip of barbed wire to puncture his tires, right? I mean, there are a lot of things you can do to mess with them. Try and punch out one of his windows. I don't know, right? But the courts here are saying it's better to let the guy cross and then charge him $100,000 in punitive damages than to have the guy shoot him out and punch his tires out. Probably right. But in the end, the $100,000 award was upheld. So again, I want to just question number one. 90% of you, right? Oh, I didn't mean to make that one correct. Yeah, I can actually grade these, which I never do because I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. But 90% of you said yes. So who here put, again, that this case was wrongly decided? Anyone want to raise their hand? There are 8 of you, so I know you exist. Oh, you're 7 of you. Oh, you're the one probably. Okay, that's fine. Anyone other Megan? Megan, raise her hand. Or anyone else want to raise their hand for putting B to this one? Nothing wrong with it. Come on. If no one raise their hand, I'll call on someone else to defend it anyway. All right, Rachel, be a lawyer. Defend B. Say why this case is wrong. No one wants to raise their hand. There are 8 of you. I don't. You're welcome. What's the argument? I mean, you have to do this in your life. What's the argument why this case is profoundly wrong?
I could see someone thinking that it was decided incorrectly because you that by not, like, they were being unfair by not letting them cross their lane.
Unreasonable, maybe.
Yeah, unreasonable.
That's what. Yeah.
They were being unreasonable by not letting them cross their lane, even though they offered to, like, pay for damages if they caused any, or pay for, or just pay them, like, upfront to use their lane.
So, let's say, Andrew, let me ask you this question, right? I don't care which one you put, doesn't matter. What would a better measure of damages be than $1, right? How could we calculate these damages in a smarter way? There was no ruts or anything else. Definitely was $100,000. But what's a measure of damage that would actually be much more optimal here?
Like more reasonable than like $1 or $100,000?
Well, I'm not concerned with the number, but how would you find out what that number is?
I mean, in my mind, I think something that'd be more appropriate would be like, what would be the price to like rent or lease with however much land you need to cross or something like that?
Oh, so the facts say that he would have had to use this other road and put up rollers and maybe hired a truck to carve out a path, right? Can we calculate how much those rollers would have cost? So let's just say, I don't know, make up a number. Let's say it would cost him $1,000 to have all this other equipment, right? And let's say that by traversing this property, he saved $1,000. You see where I'm going with this, right? What might a better measure of damages have actually been here?
Kind of put it at $1,000.
Yeah.
On top.
In other words, he saved about $1,000 by crossing over the guy's land. Pay $1,000 and 1 penny. Something like that. I'm making it up. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, whatever the number is. But that would actually punish him for being a cheapskate, right? That would punish him for not using the correct path. And as far as the Jacques are concerned, they were basically making zero, and now they get $1,000. It's better off. So both parties are actually better off there because they're being compensated for the actual cost, right? In other words, Marcos, let's say hypothetical, right? You're the trail home guy, right? And you say, hey, I'm going to pay $1,000 to hire these rollers, right? What dollar amount would you offer to the Jacques to go across their land if you had to pay $1,000?
For me to cross their land.
Right. You say, look, for me to buy the rollers, it's going to cost me $1,000. To cross your land, I don't need anything. How much would you be willing to pay the Jacques?
Well, $1,000 for.
Well, exactly $1,000?
$1,000 and some.
Yeah, that's right. In other words, if you know it's going to cost you $1,000 to buy the rollers, you're going to offer them at least that much. Look, I can offer you $1,000 and it's going to be a piece of cake, right? I don't have to do everything else. Okay? Now, if that amount goes, say, to $5,000, say, screw it, I'll just use the rollers, right? If you have to pay more money to the Jacques to trespass than the rollers cost you with the rollers. So when you're negotiating, that's like your point, right? You're basically wanting to pay the amount of money it needs to not have to use the rollers. But once it goes over that, it's probably not worth it for you anymore. So I think there are other ways of calculating damages here, absent the $100,000 punitives. But without a doubt, the court was trying to send a real big message here, and I guess they did. Okay. Bundle of sticks broke. Yeah. I bought a thing of pickup sticks to use as an image, but they're so thin you can't really see them from the distance. They don't work. But I do have in my office somewhere. Questions then on the Jacques case. Yeah, Shinoda.
When you were explaining how much they would be willing to pay, you said $1,000 over, but wouldn't it be under $1,000?
Yeah, I mean, once you get over 1,000, I think it's not worth it anymore.
Because the positive externality is lost when you go past that.
Yeah, over $1,000, you might as well pay for the roller. So I mean, that's like your price point, right? 1,000. I think over that, you're probably not going to want to do it. Okay, maybe it's easier still, but that's your price point. Yeah, Mike.
Why did the sheriff that had showed up? Why did they allow them to continue the activity once they were already cited for trespassing?
I don't know exactly what point the sheriff showed up. But I don't know if it's after they crossed or they're finishing crossing. I'm not sure. But in theory, I mean, if the sheriff, I mean, the next case is a good example. But if the sheriff shows up in the middle, they can stop them in the act. Yeah, Natalia. Oh, okay. This was, I think, Kendra's question. The court says if punitive damages are not available, right, and you see someone trespassing, you're not going to call the cops. You're not going to file a lawsuit. You can start shooting ass tires. And there's a danger of engaging in self-help. So because property owners know that punitive damages are available at the back end, it's like, okay, go cross. By all means, I'm going to sue you, right? I'll get some money from you. But if you know there's no money available, then you start firing. You start shooting. Yeah, bro.
What would happen if there was no other route that they could?
Okay, so landlocked, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You'll do something like this in property too, where imagine you're in a piece of property, right? And you're completely landlocked, and there's no way of getting out. Courts will actually imply what's called an easement, right? That you can cross over. And courts will actually make you give that. And the government actually has to pay for the usage, right? So there are cases where you have a landlocked property, but the courts have to imply a way out. You can't do it on your own. Make sense? Are there any other questions on the Jacque case? All right, I'm doing two cases. Let's do the next one. The next case is a very significant one. It's only very short. But this was an article I found in the New York Times from the time that this case arose. Now, who's next? Shinoda, do you find it, strange that there was a reporter from the New York Times and a photographer who were present at the exact moment these guys were getting arrested for trespassing on the farm? Do you find that peculiar?
I mean, this was probably the civil right or whatever activist way of getting test case through the court.
You're exactly right. This was a setup, right? This wasn't that, two guys just wandered onto the farm saying, hey, let's go talk to you. They were trying to set up a test case to allow the courts in New Jersey to carve out an exception to this right to exclude, right? The fact is, this photographer was sitting there waiting, getting this perfect shot. It's a good shot too, right? So basically, they brought a reporter along with them, right? They brought a reporter along with them. Now, Shinoda, I'll call on you because you mentioned this before. What about this case troubled you? You said something very specific that bothered you about it.
So, if I recall, originally I can't remember,
Tedesco, yeah.
He got the conviction that he wanted.
Yeah.
And then they appealed, but he didn't even want the appeal. I mean, he didn't even bother fighting the appeal. The prosecutors didn't want to bother with this either. So
yeah.
The courts really didn't have a case to try to settle.
Yeah, very good. You'll study in, or maybe you should study in common law, the idea of a case or controversy, that courts can only consider issues where the parties are adverse. They're actually opposed to each other, right? If, plaintiff sues defendant and they both agree on the underlying issue, courts aren't supposed to do that. It's called an advisory opinion. Courts don't do that. Courts resolve controversies. Here, by the time this case gets up on appeal, the prosecutor didn't want it. The farm owner didn't want it. No one wanted it. Effectively, the court issued an opinion where no one wanted it, except for the migrant workers and their aid workers, right? Even the name of the case, State v. Jacque, right? What state? State of New Jersey. New Jersey wasn't appealing this case. So the entire case is a sham, right? I don't say that lightly. It's a good case, there's good property stuff, but the entire nature of the case is an absolute and complete sham because there's no controversy. And the court just brushes this over very, very quickly. I'll give you a tip. The New Jersey Supreme Court, in general, for common law cases in this time period, is always a minority rule. If you get any New Jersey case this semester or next semester, they're about to reverse the common law, right? Without fail. Any case in your casebook, in this class, contract, whatever, if it's from the New Jersey Supreme Court, they're about to reverse the common law. If you know nothing else, they're about to reverse the common law. This is a very, very aggressive court in the 70s and 80s that did very strange things. So, like it or not, this was a very typical ruling of that court. Now, putting aside whether the litigation was proper, I think it was completely illegitimate, I want to focus on the actual legal issues. So let me read you a bit from this. Article. Okay, so Mr. Tedesco, the owner of the farm, said to a reporter who accompanied Jacque and to Harris, "I'll smash you for this. I'm going to get you for this. This is my property. You can't come in here looking around." Another farmer told the reporter, even President Nixon would not be allowed in. Okay. Another farmer said that the farmers would resort to violence to repel those trying to help the workers, likening it to the violence that resulted from the civil rights movement. He said, "This violence is going to snowball." Another farmer told the New York Times, either Hitler or Stalin would have known how to deal with the migratory farm workers in the camp he maintains. So, I'll give you this background. Okay, the Times reports that the farmers were using the trespass laws to keep the migrant workers isolated by not allowing them to travel from camp to camp. Let me explain to you what this means. So imagine you have a big farm, right? You have a camp here, you have a camp here, and you have a camp there. Okay. You know this from torts. You can enter property if you're a licensee, right? You're licensed to enter torts, right? Property. But, farmer A is only allowed to be on camp A. He can't go to camp B. So imagine farmer A walks from camp A to camp B. In the middle, he's trespassing. And the farmer himself can be arrested for trespassing by just moving around. The effect of this regime was to keep people, it's not trapped, but the effect is to keep them stuck on one given farm. They couldn't talk to each other, right? This is why they couldn't escape to get aid from the doctors or whatever else. I'll keep reading. On the camp, there was only one flush toilet. It was a privy with crawling flies. 7 men slept in a single room. The beds had no sheets or mattress covers. Jacque was at the camp to investigate a report that a 19-year-old worker had suffered a cut on his hand while working, and he couldn't receive wages. Harris went to the camp to pick up a 36-year-old migrant whose face was slashed and had to return to the hospital to remove stitches. At the time, the workers made roughly $9 a week, and a family of 12 slept in a small bed with space for 8, and they seldom had running water. So these were pretty egregious conditions, but this is a test case. So Oscar, with that being said, what were the facts? What was what actually happened here it's a camp in New Jersey?
Okay, so the facts of this is you had one defendant who was a field worker for the nonprofit corporation, and that provided health services with migrant farm workers. And then you had the other defendant who was an attorney for the nonprofit corporation that provided legal advice and representation for the workers. Well, they entered the property of Tedesco for the purpose of giving aid to the migrant workers. And part of the aid was also giving legal advice. Even the nonprofit corporation was funded by the government, which was pursuant to one of the acts of Congress. Tedesco refused to allow the private legal consultation, and when the 2 defendants insisted on privacy, Tedesco wrote a written complaint with the police alleging a violation of the New Jersey trespassing statute, and the municipal court of township convicted them violating the statute, and they.
So, very good, Oscar. So, Anne, let me move on to you. I mentioned this before, but trespass is a strict liability offense, right? Mm-hmm. Very easy. If you're on the property of another, you're trespassing. Does the statute have any exceptions?
That particular statute?
Or at least any you studied in class last term?
Well, I don't know. I don't think that the previous case is that much in conflict, because it even quotes the case where it says, own property for any purpose which does not...
No, you're jumping like 5 steps ahead. No, it's okay. But does the statute, the trespassing statute, have any exceptions as a strict liability offense?
If it's a state statute, federal law would be...
Oh, there's no federal law in point.
No,
this was a red herring by the court. This was completely irrelevant. The fact they received federal funding has no bearing on this case whatsoever. I love they put that in. It has no bearing on it. There's no supremacy clause issues, right? That's what they're trying to get at. But I'm just asking a simple question. Does a trespass statute have any exceptions?
Well, if it violates your fundamental...
You're fighting the question. Does a statute have any exceptions? A strict liability offense?
No.
No, it doesn't. So we did a case this semester. We had a statute without an exception in it. Or like, remember what case we're talking about? It was a fake case. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Go on.
Okay, hold on.
It was a fake case.
I'm trying to think about it.
I'll come back to you. Do you remember what it was? Spelunking. The spelunking exploit. But what was the statute at issue there? What was the statute that they were convicted of violating? What was that statute for? What was the case about? What did they do in the cave? Why are they being tried? Max?
For murder?
Murder, right. They ate the guy, right? Was there any exception to the murder statute for self-defense? Was there any baked-in exceptions to the murder statute for self-defense? In other words, if you kill a person who's about to kill you, are you guilty of murder?
Oh, no.
Why not?
Because you're protecting your own life.
Self-defense, right? But the statute was silent. Now, Audrey, where did the self-defense exception come from? Did the legislature create it?
In that case? Yes. In that case?
How did the self-defense exception to murder in that case develop? Anyone? Yeah, Julian?
Society.
More precise?
I'm sorry.
More precise? How did it develop? Common law. Judges, right? In that case, the judges developed this exception for self-defense because they argued murder is about deterring crime, but if someone's about to kill you, you're not going to be deterred. You can save your own life. So even if you have a statute, right, there's a common law tradition of courts reading exceptions into statutes based on some countervailing concerns. Right? So Arlette, what exception does the New Jersey court read into the trespass statute here? What sort of exception do they read into it?
Was it when they were referring to how, like, in courts, there's also, like, the necessity in private and public, or
What, again, so Ann said it a minute ago, the trespass statute, strict liability, no exceptions. It doesn't look like that after this case, does it? What does the court do to the trespass statute?
they kind of make an exception.
Yes, they carve out an exception to the trespass statute. What's that exception?
It's in regards to, like, well, they don't go into the Constitution.
No, I'm not talking about the Constitution. God, we're not talking about the New Jersey Constitution here. We're talking common law. What is the exception they read into that statute? It's a very narrow one, but it's very broad. Adia, you want to take a step? Yeah, give me a little bit more. Audrey, want to add?
Yeah, like that if you like let them onto your property, then like you shouldn't be able to, I guess like restrict their.
Okay, very good. So here's the money quote, right? Here's the money quote. Under our state law, ownership of real property does not include the right to bar access to governmental services available to migrant workers, and hence there was no trespass from the meaning of the penal statute. Everyone see what they did there. It was very subtle, right? It was very subtle. But you had a statute, a trespass statute. The court carved out a common law exception to it for the benefit of migrant workers and government providers who can give them services, right? Right, so it's a very strange idea, right? When judges modify common law, it's like, well, you know, it's case law, judges can modify it. But when you have a statute, generally that's for the legislature to decide, right? The legislature could have decided to carve out if there are any government workers that can trespass. Nothing would stop the legislature from doing this. But here, the New Jersey Supreme Court decided to read it in as a matter of common law. And they actually modified a statute, not because it was unconstitutional, but because, well, you tell me why, Lauren. Why did they feel compelled to carve out this exception to the trespass statute?
Well, because they talked about how, like what you said earlier, how the way they had the camp set up, they did it to isolate them. So, kind of, because they didn't want the rights of property owners to pretty much infringe on the rights of people that they allowed on their property.
Okay, good. This was based on policy decisions of how things actually were working. Now, this was not based on constitutional law. And you were talking about fundamental rights. I stopped you dead in your tracks because that was not the basis of this opinion. What?
Freedom of movement?
That's a constitutional thing, right? But they deliberately didn't resolve this on constitutional grounds, right? They said non-constitutional terms are more satisfactory, whatever that means, okay? But then they say property rights serve human values, okay? And property rights must be limited by humanity, okay? They say that the well-being of these workers must remain the paramount concern of a system of law. And they do what you might call a balancing test. You see this a lot in common law, not so much in property. They say that the needs of the occupants, as the migrant workers, are so imperative, and their strength is so weak compared to the farmers. The law denies the occupants the power to contract away what is deemed essential to their health, welfare, or dignity. These are words you don't see very often in property opinions. This is very much common law, even though, as Anne, right, this is not a common law decision. Their Jersey Supreme Court was just, they were on their own planet. No court ever followed this. This is their own thing. So this is the outlier, not the norm. In most states, if you trespass, you trespass. Okay. Yeah. Is there a hand? Okay. Yeah, Mariah.
So would this have come up with only if the migrant workers didn't have conditions that were really bad? Because then the balancing test doesn't necessarily.
I appreciate your question. There's no actual balancing test here, right? What the court's doing here is effectively giving migrant workers a statutory right to access care. As a matter of course, all these camps are in pretty bad condition. So I don't think it would have mattered if this camp was crystal clear. The point is these people can't freely travel between one place to the next. So therefore, for them to get assistance, government workers need to enter the camp to provide this assistance. Understand? That's the basis of the ruling. I don't think they were so concerned about how clean, maybe they improved the toilets, more beds, whatever. I don't think there would be any difference. The entire nature of a balancing test. Law students love balancing tests until you start thinking about how do you actually weigh the scales, and how dirty must a farm have to be before it outweighs the interests. As a general matter, the migrant farmers, limited education, right? Usually not in the best health conditions, poor. Farmers employing them, that's going to cut against the farmers every single time. I think, at least. Yeah, Andrew? And then Brittany.
So my question is now that these government agents can now go onto the farm.
And by the way, they aren't even government agents. They're basically private groups funded by the government. Yeah. It doesn't make a difference, but it actually
these
does.
Aid workers,
yeah.
Now they can go on the farm and go to the living quarters and help them out, do what they need to do. Can the property owner still restrict their access to, I guess, the rest of the property?
Can they do inspections on the farms or just the labor camp where they're sleeping, right?
Yeah, kind of.
You read the opinion. I read it. I don't see anything about that. I mean, the court gives this holding that they can't exclude them, but it doesn't say where they can't exclude them from. One of the downsides of having these common law decisions is they're very fuzzy. if the legislature said we want to make sure that licensed aid workers can visit, X times a month, right? Or they're required to meet with a migrant worker for at least 30 minutes in private. I mean, you can imagine a legislature can make a pretty fixed rule about this. The court's opinion here is by nature fuzzy. And the consequence is what's going to happen next, someone's going to try and enter the land and go not just the work camp, but also the field where they're working. And that person gets arrested for trespassing. You have to test that one as well as another case. Is he allowed to do that? So it delegates the lower courts the responsibility of developing the contours of where the law is.
It's just something like Cameron is, with the respect to being like an invitee, licensee or trespasser. If you are invited on the land to do a certain job, and then you go off away.
Yes, beyond the scope, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Good point. Hey, Brittany, your hands up a minute ago.
Yes, I have two questions. One of the noted kind of like rules, but one of the necessity public or private may justify entering the land. Would that in this context, would that be a question of law or a question of fact?
So you're talking about the necessity doctrine, like there's a storm or something and you have to enter the land? Is that what your question's about?
I mean, I think here they were saying the necessity for them to enter the land because it was an immediate issue with a health issue with one of the
I see your point.
workers. So
Yeah.
that type of necessity being a justification of entering the
So
land.
so you took torts more recently than I did, but my understanding of necessity is it's for your own safety, not someone else's. Can you trespass to save someone else in necessity doctrine? Okay. I think that if that's the case, then you could perhaps save them from sort of imminent emergency. Then the question is, was this an imminent emergency to justify the necessity doctrine?
And that wouldn't be question of law. That would
Yeah, and the fact that didn't come up here means it probably didn't meet the requirements of necessity for someone else. It's usually like in a storm or some sort of like disaster. I mean, something like really urgent, not like this is an ongoing farm situation.
And it seemed like it was more dicta. I was just kind of wondering if them.
Yeah, I mean, if there was like, imagine like a fire broke out in the farm and they need to go out and rescue some guy who was like in a wheelchair or something, I think that would be a...
Even if the
the farmer, Tedesco,
Even if he said no, it would be justified for them to come.
I think necessity would get you there, but not just for ongoing health condition. I don't think it's quite as urgent. And your second question,
Yes,
ma'am?
my second question was, you said that this was essentially, New Jersey kind of being in their own world. But the exceptions for government agents to be able to come in, let's say if it was to protect a child or something of that sort, that does override
With
private property
court
interests?
orders, though.
Okay.
So generally, you'll take criminal procedure at some point later. A government official can't enter in without certain permission. So a search warrant is one way. If there's a CPS visit or something, a court order will allow it as well. There's a difference between criminal searches and administrative searches. I don't want to bore you. But a government worker can't just knock on your door and come in without any cause. That's illegal. You can sue them for that.
So pretty much consistent with the exception of...
And again, these aren't government workers. The court fudges this by citing these statutes that have nothing to do with... That's just where they get money from. These are private groups who definitely can't enter. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Anne.
So, and this is, I don't know if you're going to cover it later, but since it mentioned that their living quarters is part of their compensation, doesn't that give them some sort of like tenant rights or?
You're very creative. I think so let's be blunt, right? These people weren't citizens, right? They're not working on the books. They're working off the books. Especially in the 1970s, these people would not have much rights in courts to sue in anything because they would probably be removed were they to go forward, which is precisely the reason why they need people to come onto the camps, and that way they can't go to a law office and travel around, right? You're not wrong, right?
If they were legal though, would they have, because I'm asking honestly, I don't know, because we haven't studied that.
So landlord-tenant laws, which we'll study at the end of this term, would probably render the quarters act as violating the implied warranty of habitability. We'll do this later in this term, right? It's egregious conditions. They're also probably not being paid the minimum wage, right? They're not withholding taxes from their salaries. They're not paying Social Security, right? They don't get paid leave. There are a lot of laws being violated on these camps. Just landlord-tenant is just the tip of the iceberg. But you're not wrong. You're not wrong. What else? Yeah, once I actually, because I'm such a nerd, I actually invoked the necessity doctrine on my own. When I was clerking in Pennsylvania, I was picking up my car once from a shopping center, and the windshield frozen over. It was a really bad snowstorm, and I turned the wipers on, and they snapped off. So I was in the middle of this really bad snowstorm, and I didn't have any wipers. I couldn't see a damn thing. So I somehow managed to get to Walmart or something. I bought wipers, but then I had to install them. And I mean, trying to install wipers in the snow where it's freezing, and you can't wear gloves. I was basically like, and it was really bad. So I managed to like drive to a bank which had one of those drive-through ATMs which had a little canopy. And I was like, okay, I realize I'm trespassing now, but I'm invoking the necessity doctrine. I actually said that to myself. I was like, okay, I know I'm trespassing. I was not a member of the bank. I didn't take any money out. Maybe I should have taken money out, make it easier. But I was like, okay. And then I used a little canopy thing to put the wipers in. But I legit said, okay, necessity doctrine. I'm not trespassing because this is what I do. But it was very unthinkable for me to do that. I was not happy about doing that. I don't like that.
There was a,
I know one at a time, guys. So Mike talk. Yeah.
Say the recent Las Vegas shooting had a really famous incident of necessity doctrine when one of the bystanders there had to steal a truck to transport some of the victims to the hospital because he couldn't wait for the EMS services to get there.
Yeah. I mean, and again, there's no bright line of what necessity is. I mean, could I have driven home without wipers? I probably would have killed myself. No pun intended, but like it was really snowing very hard and I could barely see anything. And like even then with my freezing hands, it took me 20 minutes to get the little thing on just all the wipers. It's dangerous. By the way, if you're ever in a snowstorm and it's really cold, don't turn your wipers on because they'll snap off. Defrost first. Okay. I'm sorry? Yes, Marcos? Your
No, I just agree with you. I mean,
don't turn your wipers on.
No, I mean, as in like breaking stuff down. Like I don't never.
No, what? No.
No, as in. Yeah. As in, you know how you said you're trespassing, and then I am invoking the necessity doctrine.
I said it to myself, whatever it was worth. I assured myself I'm not trespassing.
Yeah, I do that sometimes, but not the necessity doctrine.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to. Okay, so all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to summarize the cases, and I'll go a little bit over the midterm because I know a couple of you are going to ask me about this. All right, so I love these results because they're basically the exact same case but different facts, right? So all of you are okay with putting a $100,000 punitive damage award for trespassing across the across the guy's farm to tear the trailer, but then all of you are also okay with carving out an exception to the trespass statute based on the deplorable conditions. It's the same case, right? I mean, it's the exact same issue, right? If the right to exclude the trailer is absolute, then the right to exclude the migrant worker aids, the aid workers, is also absolute. But this right to exclude comes up over and over again in property. So any questions on this before I'll talk about the exam for a bit? Yeah, Brittany.
It was a point I was going to make before we went to state v. Jacque.
Yeah.
But I'm actually not surprised by the response of people agreeing with the first and the second, because even in the first case, it said every person has the exclusive right to enjoy his or her property for any purpose that does not injure or invade the rights of others. And so I felt that for the first case, he wasn't invading, or it was invading his rights only, but he, it wasn't the same type of issue with state v. Jacque.
No third parties.
He was right, exactly, and so he was invading the interests of other people, and so therefore his property rights should have been violated.
And made that point. I cut off before she was going in the other direction, but you're exactly right. There's this old phrase. I'm going to spell it wrong. If you correct my spelling, I always spell it wrong. It's sic utere, or that's how it begins, right? It means you can use property as you wish, so long as you don't injure others with your use of the property. Okay? Which is a nice expression. It's always difficult to apply. Now, historically, what that means is you can't use your land to injure people on other lands. So, for example, if you have a factory on your property, right? If you have a factory on your property, and you're dumping, pollutants into a river, and then the people downriver from you are getting injured, you're using your property in a way that injures others, right? Historically, that's how it's been used. Now, Brittany makes a different point. I think Anne made this point earlier today, that this maxim can be extended not only to people on adjacent properties, but also your own property. That is, your own invitees are in that calculus. And if you're using your land to injure your invitees, that is not a proper use of your land. So that's where the Jersey court departs. That's not traditionally how it's been used. Usually a person who's on your land is there at their own discretion. And they can leave if they don't like what's going on, right? Common law, at least. The specifics of the migrant workers are a little bit different, precisely because they don't have the sort of mobility that others might have, which is why there's a very specific case that hasn't been extended to their doctrines. Because generally, if I go to someone's property and they start treating me like garbage, I leave. But the workers are, they don't have that option to leave. Now, under modern law, Anne mentioned landlord-tenant law. That didn't really exist in the 1950s and 60s. It started, in the second half of the 20th century, where the government imposes requirements on how housing conditions have to be kept, that landlords have a duty to keep things clean in a certain fashion. That's a fairly recent innovation. Some of it's common law, most of it's statutory. Does that get at your question a little bit?
Yeah, it was more of a point.
Yeah, it's a good point.
That rule or
Yeah.
I guess doctrine, it was in both cases. It was
Yeah,
cited in
very
both.
different ways though, right? Yeah. And one is using your property, and the second is using the people on your property. There's just a little disconnect, but the exact same principle. Anne, your hand was up a minute ago?
No, it's just.
Same point?
Exactly.
But you raised it earlier. I didn't mean to cut you off. I wanted to get the other, but that's exactly
No,
right.
just because you were saying it's the exact same case, but it's not really.
Ooh, maybe you're right. Maybe the 90%ers are right. Okay. Anyone else on Jacque or Jacque? All right. So your first Langdell is Friday. I got a room for you. It's 5:17 at noon. So let me walk you through this. The purpose of the Langdells, I'm sure as you know, is not for Garrett to teach you stuff. That is thankfully my job. But it's to prepare you for the exam, the midterm, how to structure yourself. What Garrett's probably going to start doing, what I think he's going to do at least, is walk you through a midterm that it gave from last year. And I want to show this to you, not because you're going to be able to answer the questions, because you won't. You haven't learned enough yet. You just haven't learned enough. You'll learn enough. If I had to guess, I would say by the week before the midterms, maybe by the middle to the end of February, you probably have enough to take this, although you might still not have it all. But I want to walk you through this anyway. The actual content of it is less important than the format. The good news is my exams are predictable. They always follow the exact same format. The midterm is 90 minutes. Final exam is 3 hours. So the midterm is the exact half point of the final. Right? The final exam is 2 questions. The midterm is 1 question. So it's literally half of the final. So you can gauge yourself there. So you have 90 minutes. There's a word limit on the midterm. Let me explain why I have a word limit. Some of you, don't have to raise your hand, are very good at dumping thousands of words in the keyboard in a very short amount of time. Might be garbage, but it's a lot of words. Some of you can't do that. I was in the former category, right? The reason why I've imposed a word limit is to make it fair. Everyone is graded on the exact same canvas. You have the same space on which to work. It doesn't reward the person who can just dump garbage for thousands of words. I can't compare that one to the next. So you'll have 1,000 words. And this rewards you from being accurate and not throwing the kitchen sink at me. I actually want you to give me the right answer that you think is the right answer, not 5 or 7 possible answers that might deviate towards the right answer. Okay? The word count is going to be available in your exam soft feature. We'll talk later about the details. If you want to handwrite, every year people want to handwrite, I encourage you not to. Because of the word limit, you have to edit, delete, move stuff around. You can't do that by hand and pen. You're welcome to handwrite if you want to. The grades usually lower by handwriters, but I can't stop you. If you do handwrite, do a word count. It's actually pretty quick with your finger. Okay? Once you go past 1,000 words, I stop reading. So make sure you are under 1,000 words. It sounds worse, but it gets easy. It actually works to your advantage when you get to it. Everything's open book, 100% open book. Bring whatever you want. I don't care. It won't help you. Commercial outline, the Bible, whatever you want. It will not help you. Nothing will help you. The only caveat, it has to be printed out. You can't bring a tablet or something that's live. It has to be printed out. Yeah, once someone asked, can you bring our iPads for our notes? Too complicated, it's cheating, so just print your stuff out. I'm sorry, I have to kill trees, but it's just for one exam. The exam always has the same format. There are going to be instructions at the beginning, followed by 5 questions at the end, but there are always 5 questions. Okay, why do I give 5 questions? It makes my math really easy, right? 5 questions, each graded on a scale of 1 to 10. That means you have a maximum of 50 points. All right, on the final, you just double that. You have a max of 100 points, right? So everything adds up. Each question, the 5 parts, are equally weighted. Okay? Now you ask, Josh, what's the difference between getting a 1 on the question and getting a 10 on the question? I'll walk you through this, right? If you leave a blank, you get a 0. That's the easy one, right? If you don't finish for whatever reason, so you don't get to number 5, you get a 0 on that one. You leave a blank, you don't get any credit. Between 1 and 10, though, it gets a little bit more involved. I'm looking for several different things when I'm grading your papers. Invariably, the fact pattern I give you will be based on the case you've studied, where I take some case you've studied and I twist it. I turn it around. I reverse some of the parties. I make it similar enough that you should be able to recognize it, but different in that the result's probably going in a different direction. What I'm looking for, and to get closer to the 9 and the 10s, I don't give many 10s, very few 10s, mostly no one ever gets, I've never given 100 ever, hasn't happened yet, not once. So there's no straight 10s, hasn't happened yet. You can try if you want, but hasn't happened yet. Usually the A plus is for the midterm is in the mid to high 80s. So that just give you a sense of where things are, right? But to get to a 9s, maybe a 10, I want you to explain for me how the case here, the fact pattern here, is similar to or different from a case you studied. And again, I'm saying cases, not rules. You need to discuss cases, please. Right? Don't just say rule of capture, say Pearson v. Post. Right? You say this is like Pearson, or this is dissimilar to Pearson. This is like Gen v. Rich, this is dissimilar. That sort of argumentation is what makes you a stronger advocate. Because invariably you're going to be a lawyer, God willing, one day, right? And you're going to have a case. And your case is like 80% similar to what the court decided before, but 20% different. And you say, well, why is that 20%? Is that means it goes one way, or that 20% means it goes another way? That's your job as a lawyer. You're not telling a judge to make something from scratch. It might happen once in a while, but most cases are governed by precedent and are similar or different. Another thing that gets you to the 9 or the 10, as it were, is what I call policy, right? What do I mean by that? We talk a lot about efficiency in this class. We talk a lot about certainty, fairness, right? The F word, right? We talk about these various elements, and if you can work that in of why a certain case yields an efficient result, or why a certain rule yields a certain result, whatever it happens to be, work that into your answer, because that shows me you're not just copying from a horn book. You've actually internalized what we've discussed this semester. That's how you get yourself to the 9s and the 10s, right? And the less of that you do, it gets closer down below. Now, there's a word limit of 1,000 words. You have 5 questions. Let's see, 1,000 words, 5 questions. Okay, do the math. So you should be writing roughly 200 words per question. It doesn't be precise, plus or minus, but that's your goal, right? You want to write a really long number 1 and then a very short number 2, because you lose a lot of points that way. But if you can combine those things, discussion of case law, discussions of policy, and maybe the ballpark of 200 words, you're getting at what I want. And how do you know what it's supposed to look like? Look at the A+ answers from years past. I always pass the A+. I always post. Everyone okay?
Yeah, she was just asking about the word count and how it goes.
1,000 words. Yeah. So I always post online the A+ answers. Now, those are not perfect. Again, they're not 100%. I haven't given 100 yet. There are probably things I don't like about those, but they're good enough to get the A+. But but that should show you how to structure it. Garrett will probably go over his the exam from his year at some point this semester. Property, unlike common law, stays very much the same. I taught it last year. It's probably the same as this year. Common law changes every year. It's awful, but this stuff's pretty stagnant. Okay, so that's the general frame of how to write the exams. The next point I want to discuss is how to actually go about absorbing the exam. The first thing I suggest you do is read the instructions. I know this sounds really stupid, but far too many students skip the instructions. They miss important stuff. Really important stuff. So this says, you're a mediator. 2 castaways are on an island. A deserted island. They ask you to write an opinion of no more than 1,000 words, addressing 5 issues. Okay. The island does not have any statutes or regulations, so you can rely on common law or natural law. Okay. Why is that important? I'm telling you your role. You're a mediator. You're trying to resolve a dispute, right? You're not necessarily taking one side. I could say you're a lawyer for this side. Write the best arguments in favor of your client. Depending on how I frame the memo or frame the issue, you have to do different things, right? You don't need to write the memo like to and from. Don't waste your time with that. But you need to understand what I'm asking you. Also, the last sentence is important. What type of law are we applying here? Is it a common law jurisdiction or a modern jurisdiction? We haven't done that too much, but trust me, it makes a difference, right? You know, you like restatement first and second. It's going to make a difference what jurisdiction you're in, what law you're applying. After you read the instructions, what I encourage you to do is jump down to the questions. Usually, the fact pattern's about 1.5 pages, maybe 2 pages. It varies. Oh yeah, Christiana, please.
When you're saying mediator, do you want us to make the answers fair, or?
Yeah, that's exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so they have to get like somewhat of a equal.
Yeah, I mean, like, so look at the question. Who has the stronger claim? I want you to be fair, not taking a side, but who has the stronger claim, right? Answer the question that they're asked, right? What is Tom's strongest claim? What is Wilson's strongest claim? I'm asking both sides of the issue, so it's going to be premised on what I'm actually asking you. Okay, but I could also ask you're a lawyer for this side. Go gung-ho on that side. Depends what I want to ask. After you read the instructions, read the 5 parts of the question. And even if you haven't read the fact pattern yet, reading the question helps a lot because it guides you what I'm looking for, right? You know, the first question, who has a stronger claim to the boar's skin? Okay, it's a hunting question, right? It's an animal, a boar, right? It's like a pig thingy. There's some discovered coins. We haven't done discovery yet, but you can guess how that one turns out. You'll love present and future interest. We'll do that very shortly. And we're talking about a dam. That means damming a river. That's water rights. Remember we did water rights? So just by looking at the questions, you can feed into your mind what the general gist is. And it's a very good way of reviewing the questions. Then I want you to read the fact pattern. I'm not exaggerating. I would give yourself at least 20 minutes to read the fact pattern. It's like, wait a minute, Josh, it's 1 page, right? If you give yourself 20, maybe 25, 15, you don't miss stuff. Maybe read it 2 times, maybe read it 3 times. The temptation is for law students to start typing right away, and that's not a good strategy. Give yourself a lot of time to really absorb the question, to outline your answers before you start writing. I would not start writing for the 20-minute mark. And you'll have this on the exam where you see the guy next to you, the girl next to you, just start typing right away. They're probably doing it wrong. Don't feel compelled to follow what other people are doing. In fact, it's very distracting. Just go in your own zone and do whatever you have to do. Earplugs are very good. After you read it for 20 minutes or so, then you can start writing. And I would keep an important principle in mind. If you have 5 questions and each worth the same amount of time, and each have to be roughly the same length, spend the same amount of time in each question. In other words, don't spend 30 minutes in question number 1, so then you'll probably have like 2 minutes left over, 2 minutes for question 5. So actually bring a watch, a real watch, not an Apple Watch, a normal watch to class, and say, I'll give myself 14 minutes per question. Whatever the number is, just divide by 5 how much time you have, right? 14 minutes, 14 minutes, 14 minutes. And at the 14-minute mark, stop yourself, right? Because if you find yourself spending 20 minutes in question number 1, that means you're going to have like 10 on question number 5. Not a good idea. This is counterintuitive, but it's a lot better to do a mediocre job on 5 questions than do a great job on 4 and leave number 5 blank. You get more points by writing everything. So the first principle, every semester, people get D's and F's on the midterm, or people don't finish. So you want to finish. And the way you finish is practicing at home, right? This is for me, for the bar exam, it's an endurance contest. The midterm's easier, it's only half. The finals double it, right? 3 hours instead of 90 minutes. So that's enough for now. Garrett will go over more, but that's how I generally want you to approach it. We still have a few minutes left, so don't pack up quite yet. Are there questions? People have questions in your mind? Yeah, Demetrius.
For IRAC,
yeah, so given the word limit, I prefer A. You're mostly having to give me the analysis. And here's a dirty little secret that law students learn their second year of law school. IRAC is a crutch, right? It's used to help get you in the zone, but it's a lot of redundancies, right? Because often the I, the R, and the A are basically repeating yourself 3 times. So primarily, it's the analysis that's going to get you here. I don't want you saying the facts. That's a waste of time. I know what the facts are. It's the A of why the fact pattern is guided by or not guided by some case you studied and putting in a case name. Now, you say like Pearson. You don't say Pearson v. Post. Just Pearson's fine. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't say the Fox case. That's annoying. Just say Pearson. Someone will say the Fox case. Happens every year. Just say Pearson. I don't know what you're talking about. Or Post, even. I know that one also. Okay, questions? Nothing? Oh, yeah, Brittany, please.
When do you start meeting with us?
The meetings come after the midterm.
So will they, I guess?
My goal is to grade by spring break.
Okay.
So I think your midterm's like the week before spring break. My sincere goal, and I can't promise you, but it's to have them done by end of spring break. I have 150 of you this semester. It's actually really big sections. You guys are a really big class. But when you guys get back from spring break, probably maybe the 2nd or 3rd week in March, you can start signing up for sessions. And there'll be either 20 minutes or 30 minutes. I haven't figured out the math yet, but there's a lot of people and so many hours a week. But then you'll have time to come over to meet with me to review your exam. But I encourage you, don't blow off the midterm, right? Don't say, oh, I want to just see where I am. The grade you get on the midterm is probably going to be your final grade. It happens every year. People move up, people move down. But if you don't take the midterm seriously, when you come meet with me, I'll know that. And I can't help you, right? If you blow off the midterm, it limits my ability to grade you because I don't know what you actually say. Well, I'll do better next time. Well, next time's a final, right? That's your next time. I don't get to talk to you after that one. It's already too late. So to the extent you actually want to get feedback that's meaningful, study for the midterm. And that, again, one note. I'll get to a second, Kendall. The number one reason I ask you, how did you study? What do people say? I looked over my notes. If you tell me that, I'll just ask you to leave. That's not studying, okay? If you say you looked over your notes, you didn't do a damn thing. You didn't do that's nothing, right? That means you're flipping, no. The way you study is by taking old exams and grading yourself. That's how you learn, right? Your outline is your own business, right? You got to make your outline. I'm not going to tell you, exactly what to do, but I'll look if you want. But the way to study is to take old exams. If you walk into the midterm, you haven't taken any old exams, you're probably going to do very poorly. Maybe you'll surprise me. I don't know. But without the usual norm is your midterm grades, your final. Again, I had one student came to me before. She got a D on the midterm, got a B+ in the final. She worked with me. I work with her. Right? You can move up, but you gotta take it seriously. Okay, Kendall, you have. Oh, I'm sorry. I call you Kendall. I'm sorry, Kendra. I have a Kendall in my other class.
Well, and you have a Kindle in this class.
Oh, I do. Oh, that's right. Okay.
It's okay.
Kendra, I'm sorry.
I was gonna ask, so is the second half multiple choice?
No multiple choice. All essay.
Only essay?
Yeah. All essay. Anything else? All right, I'll see you all next week. Thank you very much.